Production Java and the Vikings both cranked out their forces. The Vikings are still in feudalism, and I just barely remembered to impose the positive effect of those cheaper infantry and cav. The infantry probably make it too cheap, at $1 each, but I don't know. It's not that huge an advantage game-wise. It just kind of feels a little wrong to me in terms of trying to equate that with the... It's that feudal infantry tended to be so crappy, at least in the medieval Europe. But I realized, wow, what's the negative for feudalism? I mean, I knew you only get half your income, but you don't pay maintenance, so that kind of evens out for most people. Probably is an advantage when you take feudalism on. There's something I totally forgot, though. You don't go forward in trade as much. You lose 1 off the number of boxes you increase when you do a trade in progress, which probably means the Vikings shouldn't be here. They won a number of trade in progresses as the other guy, the guy being traded in progress all over, and got 1 square on each case. And they shouldn't have. We'll leave it be. But try to play correctly from now on. But again, you know, all these different little chits, and there's nothing on the board in the game state that helps remind you what things they each affect. I don't think a pile of additional cards as modifiers, although that could have all the information, would tell. I'll tell you what I would like to see. I'd like to see the chits that actually have it indicate with some tiny little color, symbol, location, or whatever. Because there's not a lot of information presented on these guys, right? There's a picture. These could be a little larger, like the regular chits for the game, or, you know, plenty of game companies seem to be able to handle chits this size and put decent amount of information on them without the clumsy picture and the huge word across it. They could conceivably put some numbers and values inside those chits, but a larger chit would make it easier. And just to indicate, hey, you know, this affects these actions. Same thing with the leaders. It would be nice to know what parts of the game are going to be affected by this, so that you're at least reminded, hey, feudalism affects trade. How did that work? Let me go look that up, because I don't remember that one right off the bat. But there's nothing in the game to really help you with that. Now, obviously, having your little player aids here might help, but it still doesn't help you. Now this one is nice. For the different leaders, they give a column as to what it affects. This is what there should be for for the artifacts as well. It really needs that kind of look into, hey, what things does this help? Anyway, let's move on to trade and progress. To make something clear, none of these player aids came with the game. I mean, you were given the game more or less as I'm playing it. Essentially, it requires additional effort to make this thing reasonably playable. First off, when you read the rules, they're not absolutely clear. Maybe contain some issues where there are contradictions. Secondly, in order to use them as a reference, you have to rewrite them or make player aids to handle that information. But, you know, it's just a matter of the game was not properly developed. And this is not an old game. It really isn't. This is, I think, from 2005. Companies, for the most part, have been doing a much better job than is shown in this game. Well, it looks to me, let me make sure, that Benin finally won the trade lottery. Remember, they have this bonus of 1 progress per glory gained, and they keep going after guys who are ahead of them. There's no real disadvantage directly from going for someone ahead of you on the progress track, and almost everybody was ahead of them. And they got the big 3 bonus going after the Hansa, or Hausa. Sorry, wrong territory. Which is starting to move them ahead and out of this really deep dark age back in the second period. But it also gave them 3 glory, which is the really cool factor too. House also had a trade in progress marker picked, so that got shot out of the water by, they're not going to get an action now, essentially. And the Tang also did a trade again with Java, who's kind of the lousy people near them. These guys aren't too hot either, but 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, I can reach them at least. Okay. Anyway, I went with the Java, ended up winning it. Again, big time win pushes me forward. Why are the Tang doing this? Why are they so interested? Well, they want to be at the top of the game for production. They get victory points for that. And that's kind of one of the things is you got to pay attention to what your victory conditions are. Like one pattern of advancement and action selection doesn't work for every country. And that's one of the coolest things in this game, in my opinion, is that, you know, the history is driven and somewhat constrained not by the rules, but by what your goals are. And that's precisely how a game should constrain things. I'm also finding that the glory track isn't annoying the way it is in, say, Empires in Arms or EU. Yes, you're collecting points all game long, but because you have multiple empires and you know, you're running them in different ways, and there are historical, you know, there are reasons people do various things. It's not simply a matter of, I want to shoot him down using my military because that's all I have. You have these extra military powers, these godlike powers from your event cards or whatever. If you do a civilize, you can just strike the leader with that. And it doesn't feel, it feels as though, so while you're not making decisions that maybe anyone in any one of your empires could make, yes, I think I'll throw a famine over in North America today. What you are getting is you're not in the position of a single empire. You're in the position of something that's kind of undefined. And that's a lot easier for me to accept when I'm not just playing one empire on the board. I have less trouble with it in Geronimo, where, you know, maybe I'm only playing the US or whatever for a given turn because I keep switching sides and everything. I just don't feel like what I am relates directly in the same way that I do if I'm playing a game of EU, where I feel like, yes, I am the King of France, or not even that, I am the spirit of France. I don't know. In a sense, the position that I feel like I'm taking in a game like this, or History of the World, is almost what I'd expect to take in a godlike game, where you're playing, you know, a god who's got these inscrutable desires on the world. And the effect on the empires are operating kind of historically within, but fulfilling your desires, just like the calamities are fulfilling your desires. And then the empires react historically to those calamities. If we compare that to one of the other 2 types of things, so the Empires in Arms EU type model I feel directly associated with the country, so I don't feel like I should be making decisions that that country cannot, which I don't terribly feel like I am in those games. I feel like those games allow me to play as that country, but that actually adds to the problem of, well, then why am I going out of my way to hunt the guy who had a good empire early in the game but no longer is a threat to the world? You know, why am I doing that here? First of all, you have very limited ability to hit different empires, and you can usually justify in such a broad scale movements, because it doesn't go into much detail, movements against, say, Vietnam, without having to take into account the fact that, yeah, he's picked up a lot of points over the game. No, that's not really the issue. Your biggest issue tends to be padding your own points, which generally drives your decisions far more than it does in an EU type game where you might be able to run things, pad your own points in that game. And, hey, I'm a big military power. I can slam down Spain, who did very well in the early eras of the game, but they really don't have anything I want, and they aren't particularly a threat to anyone anymore. The other side of it, though, is then there's the question of the very powerful godlike cards here. And again, it doesn't bother me here in the way that it bothers me if I'm playing Paths of Glory, right? In Paths of Glory, I feel like I'm so intricately linked to the military. This is no war game. In Paths of Glory, it's being a war game, but I'm intricately linked to, like, the fate of Germany. I'm making production decisions. I'm making tactical decisions to some extent, at least operational choices, as to how to conduct a front once I've decided on the strategic idea of going into that, going for a particular space or whatever. It's too much detail for me to then reach back up and say, yeah, and I'm also the god of Germany. I mean, I should be able to create some good weather for my attack on Russia. Or, I think the Lusitania will not be sunk today. Not that they have that control. It's split decks. But, yeah, it's just, it's this ridiculous. That also provides you with these really weird choices. This one provides you with weird choices in that the cards can do several different things, but you choose what you're doing on the action, and then you try to figure out if your cards can help you with that. It's not a matter of my card itself is making me decide, do I want the Lusitania to sink, or do I want to move some troops on the board? That seems like such a false decision, but here, in this much broader, more abstract type of game, it bothers me less, no matter what. And I actually, just some random philosophizing, eating up far too much video. Okay, so now the Arabs do a maneuver, and I'm actually launching an attack here. I might be launching another one somewhere else. Launch one up here in Italy as well. A couple of units. The reason, so I've got this huge disorder problem, but I also get some victory conditions. I don't remember why I was expanding westward in particular. It had something to do with getting at blue, I think, but blue's no longer in the lead, green's in the lead, so I'm trying to knock out some Irish. And I also get some glory, I think, from being Islamic, conquering non-Islamic territories. But I've got some serious problems as well. I've got all this disorder. Now, what's kind of cool with the disorder is these cities add to my number of units that I have to commit. So this would normally take 4 units, but the cities go down to 0 if it's non-archer missile units being used. So I'm able to clear out some of these some of the disorder. I'm not going to be able to get all of it. Here and here, most annoyingly to have Medina in that position, I'm going to have to lose it. I'm going to need to do a production phase probably to clear out the rest of that disorder, just to get a pile more troops so that I can throw them in. But as of right now, I'm going to try to improve my situation as much as possible. Partially successful. The disorders have been removed, but that's kind of automatic. I didn't use these boats, which I could have positioned into some additional places. Let me see. Could I have gotten this out of the way? 3, 4. No. With those big cities, I really need to get the missile units into play. And the Suez Canal doesn't exist yet, so I can't just slip a boat through here to try to help with Medina, which wouldn't be, well, no, that would be pretty hard with the mountain defense modifier of 3. That's going to take a lot of units. I may just want to buy that one off. Okay, I succeeded here in Rome, and that was a fertile region. So you can see there's a disorder marker up here in Illyria, where the city is for the Irish, because they're Christian, losing a fertile area. This actually defeated the large stack, including an elephant. Wait a minute. Yeah, because this isn't cav, it's just infantry. The elephants are just not that amazing. They're cool, but they're not amazing. And once cav stops being horse cav, I don't know if elephants are still potent. Well, they're not potent against that, I'll tell you that much. But they are going to be potent against the horse artillery. They're just not going to do anything against tanks because they're not allowed in Era 7 anymore, and cav actually becomes immune to elephants because they no longer exist at that point. Okay, fair enough. But yeah, a large stack was defeated here. Not that different, a point difference in the cards. The Irish actually had 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 defensive points here against what turned out to be a 9-strength stack attacking them. I probably would have been better off holding off a unit and forcing this to become a disordered unit so that I would get a doubled unit against it next. I'd have 2 shots at taking it. I didn't want to lose units though. So if you commit everything, there's a chance you lose everything. If you commit it piecemeal, you might have a better chance of winning overall, but you're almost certain to lose units at a time. Anyway, let's keep finding more maneuver. English have the next maneuver, and I'm leaving defensive forces. I'm attacking these Danes mainly because I have a number of galleys, and there aren't a lot of places I can put them, here and here. Well, one's going here. Now, if I scattered around elsewhere, I guess I could leave a galley out at sea here if I invaded Senegal, so maybe I'll change my policy. Here's the problem. I have 3 ships loaded with infantry. My goal, among other things, like being ships, is to be one of the bigger powers outside Europe. Well, in order to do that, I need to have 2 areas outside Europe. But my other goal is to beat up on people who are doing better than me. That's just about everyone, but okay. But my main goal is to get victory conditions. But when I look at the beat up on other people, the best choice seems to be hitting something like Senegal and then spreading out through Africa. My higher quality troops should eventually be able to do a pretty good job on Benin and take Africa. On the other hand, well, there are a lot of Vikings. I'm not going to beat them right away. They may be my goal, but right now, getting victory points, maybe my best goal is to just wipe out the competition, the one guy, the one space that the Portuguese have. Of course, the Portuguese could take a space again. In my favor there, though, I come out earlier. I don't know what they have under here, but if they don't have a boat there, which I doubt they have, because they would have probably taken another space, well, if I take this out, I probably get second place in that, which I think is probably my best move. So let's see what we do here. 1, 2, 3, I can't get there. My speed is only 4, I don't have an Explorer. So then my next choice is maybe to grab a bunch of spaces in South America. That'll limit the Portuguese chance of expanding. So I think that's where we're going to go. And given all that, I can't get my galleys across the ocean. Only the Vikings are able to do that out of the nations on the board right now. And they still are, as far as I know, I hope. Yep, no reduction of that ability. So I think I'll try to position myself in South America. I could also have done North America. That might be good in the long run in terms of getting that first place finish in the rest of the world, because I could knock out more Vikings that way. We'll let the Portuguese kind of fight here. Value-wise, in the long term, North America is worth more. They've got some grain and oil up here, whereas South America really has just the Rio de Plata region. Blue versus red. Hard call. Because basically I'm helping blue if I go down here more than I am up here. Actually, it should be... Oh, these are both blue. This is blue, this is red. Wow, interesting. Satavaharna pushed their navies over to attack in the Bay of Bengal. You can see there's nothing there. What's up with that? Well, I'm not quite sure. They managed to sink all the gray pieces, and I don't know where they went to after that. I bought new navies, but I don't know where my old ones are. Did they get stacked under here accidentally? Because they did not attack there. No, that one got built. Oh no, I did shift one over here. I probably shifted another one somewhere useful. I can't rightly tell. This one got built, this one got shifted. Let me leave one out here, which would actually give me $3 more in production. And I built everything I could. Okay. That gives me a little bit more money. I had thrown it in here as a defensive measure, I think. Right? I don't know. Anyway. I ended up launching an attack, cutting through here at the, what are those? The Khmer. And smashed my way in through here, I think. Oh, no. Through here, and then used the strategist to get into Siam. So I couldn't have gotten the navy there. He just got stacked there after the naval battle. In fact, I think there should be 2 there, not just 1. But I thought I built 1 there. Oh well. Anyway. Then I used this rare conjunction to do a build phase and built the rest of my units there. I'm basically looking at knocking those suckers out of the game. They're producing too many points. I managed to get rid of their universal suffrage marker, which means they can no longer celebrate that. That apparently gets placed on the map because it doesn't say, just goes on the counter on the card the way some of the others do. If I can get... I could have taken another movement action, probably taken away the Great Library and the paved roads as well, and really cut into them, because right now we're getting 2 points a turn from that. And, you know, at the very least, they're down to 4 of them. I think that's about equivalent to what someone else may have. I'm not sure. I've only got 3 as purple. I had more before. So they may still be in first place for them. But I'm definitely putting more and more pressure on them, trying to drive them into a position where they no longer are this tremendous point gainer. The Saxons have turned out to be generating points for far too long, too well. And we've seen the effect here. Basically, nobody's been picking on them, but now that they're towards the top of the heap, somebody had better. This maneuver phase is taking a long time, as is my commentary on it. We've got to check. I think we got a couple more coming. We took 2 maneuvers. They have a wild card on the plains with the democracy that doesn't really hurt them. First, the Vietnamese moved in on China, took Sichuan, and then over here, the Plains Americans attacked here and here. Basically, kind of a last gasp with them. Got split results. Got defeated here pretty badly in a couple of rounds of combat, but here, we had a few rounds. And they won, which gave them a point of glory, because the Vikings are higher up on the track than they are, which is a bonus for them. They probably should have just attacked in one space and conserved their strength. They're kind of weak now. We're probably going to see them wiped out pretty soon, which is a pity, because they've been worth decent points for blue. They've been part of what's keeping blue in the game here. What the hell are the Portuguese up to? Civilized action. Let's see if we got a maneuver here. Yeah, the Russians are doing one of them. The Russians actually discovered something disturbing. They have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 territories in Europe. Let's see what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 territories for the Arabs. They've finally fallen out of second place in Europe. Obviously, these guys 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 are still ahead. But that means they're not going to get any points in Europe. They had been getting a point per turn there. They're pushing into Asia, where their points they've been in second place in Asia. And India, these folks have been really limiting their points there. They had hoped to spread out more and take more, but with the expansion going into Australasia and coming down here, we feel like we have to kind of cut them back a little bit. This is kind of disturbing for them, for the Russians, because green is most in competition with gray, and purple's kind of crushing gray, and purple's points aren't that great, but you do want to try to pad your own nest. Other people and you have things you can do against the leader that don't involve using your empire's power and wasting your own point gaining ability. Very, very different from the feeling in History of the World, which is, hey, you got a few cards that you can throw at people to do bad things. There's no question about that, but most of the damage you do to someone comes from wiping them off the board, just knocking their points off the board that they're constantly producing. Well, there's nothing that really feels that way here. You're still running the empires that you have. They're still able to operate. So they're not just sitting there being point producers that are easy to pick off, but on the other hand, they might be sitting on something you really, really want. Like in this case, they're preventing the Russians from getting points, which is... It just feels so much more believable to me, that the outcomes that come out of this game. Even if, maybe the exact history isn't the same. The Saxon Empire here lasting for so long, and the Russians expanding into China, and the Irish sailing. Well, this was just weird. This would not have happened, I think, had we started in the first era, though. And I think that is the one thing that changes this game dramatically. If you play by the rules, the base rules, rather than the optional start in the first era rule, I think you get really skewed growth of the religions, and a lot of the things kind of end up skewed, because they're just things that are expected to have started, like Christianity, Islam, democracy. They could get squelched. and have to be restarted, but it just doesn't, the world isn't seeded properly for the later starting scenarios. The world back here in the antiquity, 4000 BCE, that's when these factors that are, key to the game start emerging. And to have them not start emerging until, the Dark Ages really doesn't make a lot of sense. And things are beginning now to stabilize and feel a little bit more believable with the history that we've seen. But the beginning stuff like the Irish going all the way into Greece to try to discover Christianity. Yes, there have been stories of, the Mongols, I think, sent out emissaries to try to learn about the different religions and convince people to come back and convert them eventually. I know the Kazan did that definitely. But it just feels very strange. Also, the humongous spread of the Vikings here, although that may not be something that you can stop, And if the Vikings were successful in the New World, they probably would have more or less spread quite quickly through it. If they could have gotten that initial toehold, they probably would have set up some lasting communities. Maybe not destroying the natives, but here we've got kind of this parity for now. The destiny action and the desire, the fact that there are certain cards that are almost always very valuable, the glory influencing ones, etc., the discarding, the reshuffling of the deck quite often, etc., adds a tremendous level of serendipity to the game. You're almost always able to throw away most of your hand, unless you happen to be full up. But in 7 players at least, very few people are full up. Let me think. Let's say we were, I don't know, I'd have to consider all the different numbers of players, etc., to see how many would reach that full up status, because that's definitely a penalty. However, you can always throw your destiny on the Empire, not that I've done that here, that you don't really need to do anything with, and it can still score you points and allow you, that really important benefit of being able to draw more and more cards in the hopes of getting the ones that let you influence glory or play for civilization or whatever. But anyway, when I say it introduces a lot of serendipity, you just draw a pile of cards and then, wow, you've got an opportunity to use some of those immediately, and sometimes they're very, very valuable. That was just something I wanted to highlight as I did the Destiny round. Going to Civilized, we got a few people doing that. I still have one more Civilized action to take. By the way, I have some of these up here because they're things that I'm likely to play, trying to help remind myself of some of the more interactive cards. The Saxons did the first Civilized, and they got almost nothing out of it, but they did do one major thing. They switched to Islam. That protects them from the Arabs, largely, and also gives them a possible glory advantage if they start marching against the Russians. And speaking of the Russians, there seem to be a lot less of them. Some Saxons died too. That is because during Portugal's action, they played a pestilence and wiped out the Russian capital and quite a few spaces with it. So that was a very effective, nasty card that nobody played against. I also picked up some cash. Might have wanted that for, say, the Vietnamese, but I couldn't get enough cash to get me any victory points, glory points. And then the final one is I grabbed Democracy. This was kind of a tough call. What I could have done was used a tribute marker so that my income gets increased. However, I don't have any really safe places. Maybe Castile could take tribute. The Democracy gives me a glory. Democracy has some advantages, but it also comes with some pretty big disadvantages. So far, we haven't seen too many people badly influenced by Democracy, but let's see. We have a Democracy here in Java, And it really means they can't go on an offensive war unless they've lost some territory. So, for example, here, the Khmer can strike back, and they can strike back hard at the Indians here. Now, this is one of those things where I have to remember the effect, but they lose glory each time they take a land area from another country. Now, they're allowed to attack sea areas, and they can actually attack a land area if one of their sea areas is taken. But it does kind of weaken, so if I did an attack with the Khmer beforehand, I think I actually did. I think it was probably illegitimate. But again, remembering all the effects of all the little chits you have on you, especially when they have no indication on them of what they actually do. You remember the things that you want to remember, basically. And that's just the nature of the games. Everybody's got to be each other's keepers in this game because it's going to be so difficult to remember your, why bother remembering your penalties? I'd probably do so and not remember my advantages, but I could definitely see people who fixate on the advantage. That's why they take the thing, and then they forget they've got a penalty. I always fixate on the negative, so I'd forget I have any advantage and end up always being affected by the negative. Anyway, for Portugal, they can spread out a little bit. Let me see if I can find them. I think they also want to pick up Christianity. They can get that off of, I forgot to grab that. They can get that off of the, Irish there. The democracy is the harder call, but I like picking up the glory. You can always decline your empire if it starts picking up too many annoying facets to it. But getting Christianity, well, now I'm the second most populous Christian nation because the Arabs moved away. Some players may want to pick up Christianity. It's not that terrible, but it also has some, all of these have a negative except I think Buddhism. And you got to really think real hard, how much do you want to deprive someone of points? If something like Saxons had become Christian, that would deprive points from certainly the Irish and now also from blue for the Portuguese. It would take away that opportunity for them to gain something. But for other people, for someone to take it just to deprive someone of points, if that weakens their own empire, that's tough. And in particular here, I've kind of set myself up. I'm pretty big, which means I may actually be a threat to the Arab points. Of course, the Arabs can't do much directly against it. All right, let's see. I think the Irish are doing civilized. The Irish put the printing press in the game. Almost everybody has it because they're so low on the order, but it gives them a glory. And they also picked up democracy for the glory more than anything, although it probably hurts them less than it does other people. And by the way, they get their Christian expansion. Do I want that? I'm not 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not far enough ahead to be able to gain from that. I'm going to grab Castile. At the beginning of their operation, they got it. Actually, the Portuguese got one too. Did they want Castile instead? I think they wanted Castile. Let's just go back and undo stuff. So the Christians will take, or the no, I just picked up Christianity. Never mind. Yeah, we'll give that to the Irish. All right. So let's see, where are we? After picking up those couple points of glory, scoring myself out there, I got a card that allows me to take another action. I'm going to play that. it might be good for next turn too, but shit, man, I can't remember what I'm doing. So, I might not play it next turn. It would be really useful for the Russians, but I think they went by without playing it last time. I would really love to do a civilized action with them, because I got to get a city on the board again. And then maybe a taxation or something. So what I really want to do with the Irish is, I think, tax, so that I can gain more territory, or more, I can get rid of this disorder maybe next time I civilize. So I'm going to spread out into Normandy now and perform a quick taxation. Here's the problem. I don't remember whether or not the Irish were attacked last turn. I think they were not. Looking at where the Arabs are. Well, now, when did these guys go here? They may have been attacked this turn. Yeah, I think they were attacked within the last couple turns. So I get to build things at a cheaper cost. Yay! Democracy in action. In kind of the early stages of a religion, maybe you should get the glory point for picking up a religion, even if you don't play the card, for this very reason. In the early stage of the religion, it expands to people who kind of want it, who it does something good for. But Christianity, for example, it does nothing good for the English right now. They don't have a lot of empty area that they're next to. And in fact, it was a hard call. Democracy was a hard call. Christianity was not, for the Portuguese. But the people who want to be the most Christian nations, or whatever, the largest Christian nations, those have a definite incentive to take their religion on. The Arabs even converted religion because of it. This has got to be over here or something. The map is a little crowded. Yeah, it's a big map, eats up a lot of table space, but it's still crowded. It's got to cover the whole world, and there are some tiny little areas, so you can't complain about that, I guess. Well, I can. I can complain about anything. Yeah, that's true. But kind of the question then comes up, so what's up with these English? Are they just mostly secular, but actually paying lip service to a religion? Are they actually followers of the religion, but just not as fanatical as some others? And which religion, I mean, which religion did the Vikings have? They don't have one yet. They haven't, are they still pagan? It's possible, I guess. The advantages for having a religion seem in a way not terribly useful to most countries. I may well see the English go Muslim, because Islamic is so good for a conquering nation who's facing non-Islamic territories. And in the truth, they have to defend here. They're not really too worried about the Islam attacking them, although with Saxony being Islamic, hey, maybe I will. I'm not going to go out of my way for that, though, because I don't get the glory point. Getting a glory point seems so valuable. It really is a big deal, especially the way that the end of turn glory often doesn't score at all. Speaking of which, I don't think anybody's getting discarded, so I'm going to have to go through all the cards and see what kind of progress we get here. A little problem with cards. Some of them have two different actions on them in their event. For example, play out an empire to discard religious strife. Alternatively, remove all disorder from one empire. Well, this is really good. This is in the Arab player's hands. He wants to play this. He can't do it now, but he needs to do a civilized action to arrange that. Now, had he had that beforehand, he drew it in his destiny. He would have done a civilized this turn if I had noticed that. But when there's two little paragraphs like that, I might miss one of them very easily. Just another, not really an attack against the way the game's formatted or presented, but more an explanation of, yes, this is going to cause more problems. And again, probably only because I'm playing solo. If I was playing my own little empires, I would probably be able to keep track of what my cards do. I still have trouble remembering what my little chits mean because that's not easily accessible. I'd have to be flipping through the player aids continuously to look that up. Of course, there's probably enough downtime in the game that you could be doing this, and if you screw that up, well, that's your own fault then, perhaps. This is a card I keep using during the Harvest Glory phase. That's not when it happens. It doesn't seem to indicate anything of that nature. It's a regular event you have to play during Civilized. Anyway, speaking of whatever I was speaking, I had thought about something I was about to say it, and now it's gone because I thought about something else. That's how my brain works. I figured I'd put it on the stack and deal with it later. I was going to come back with a speaking of whatever the fuck it was I was speaking of, which if I could go back and listen to the tape, I would know. Yes, speaking of downtime. That's something I never discuss in my games. Certainly not when I'm just playing them solo. It's not a negative effect for me, so I don't think about it. I know that it is for a lot of people, but it just doesn't even come to mind for me. Because I think about, gee, I kind of like, being able to relax away from the game. Or have some time every now and then to think about the game. But usually I'm one of those people, those horrible people, who's going to be chatting with my neighbors and enjoying the social experience of a game if I'm playing it opposed. And that's why I play a game opposed, of course. Rather than, geez, I got to figure out every one of my moves. Oh no, he did something. Now I got to refigure everything continuously. Man, I hate playing with people like that. I mean, it's okay as long as half the people aren't like that, so you can joke around and do whatever you like. But man, if you're sitting at a table with people that you don't really know and everybody's kind of focusing. Yeah, I had fun with a game of Here I Stand that was kind of like that at Concept World. Just because I didn't really know anybody, I felt like I had to just concentrate on the game. And I ended up winning because of that, probably. Because, I was able to plan all my turns out. Didn't have anybody to chat with. But that's not why I really game. Card play, what we're going to see is blue is going to play Expanded Glory, all his empires, all target empires, glory numbers are doubled. So he gets to pick one of his empires that's going to produce him the most. And then since he has an edge, even though he doesn't think he's doing terribly well, but this is the turn where he gets the edge, he's going to play Glorious Glory, which doubles everybody's. So he's going to have the quadruple over there. Nobody had anything to counter, but the Expanded Glory is going to go into Red Pink's hand as he steals it with the Vizier. That's a good card to have, for yourself each turn. And these are the ones you want to target. Very little else is really worthwhile, because if your empire goes down the crapper and stops producing, you can almost always trade it in. Blue's been finding themselves having some trouble. Saxons have been having trouble. The gray has been having trouble finding something that would exceed the points that their empire's making. So they've kind of left it out there, even though it's not a huge producer. They can look and say, yeah, that doesn't look like it has very good prospects either. But to some extent, their empires also haven't been really damaged terribly badly. So picking for an empire seems kind of less guaranteed to be valuable. Those tend to get thrown away or put into the pile fairly easily. I don't think I'd aim for that. I could see some players trying to do that. I'm not that good at planning ahead. Oh, a bitch, I forgot to cover this. I don't know, probably got chatting about something or just didn't remember. So, well, I'll go back, and the Brits get to fight their battle with that from back in their maneuver stage way back. As the pip for the turn goes to the first player in cycle ever. Here's where we are. Nothing too exciting on the progress track. That all just advanced as expected. But over on the glory track, those cards took a rather lackluster blue player was able to turn his Americas, 3 points that he gains from that, doubled as 6, doubled again as 12, into a very, very wealthy position on the glory track. Of course, that card got handed over to red, but red can have it as far as we're concerned, right? You know, it's not that big a deal there. We see gray made up more ground again. Green fell back. They would have been doing okay, but Russia got hosed. They made a base of 1 point, which doubled 2 for their Russians. So that really hurt them, the chit that they got. And they were one of the leading players, so that's great. You can see purple's falling way behind. This thing is the problem. It just doesn't produce. I've got my home, I've got India, that's 2. I'm close to being able to start getting points for the world, but there's some big empires out there that are keeping me from just quite making into the point thing. If some of those empires dissolve, then I'd be in better shape, but if I can't get in better shape, I've got to dissolve soon. That's going to open up a humongous vacuum here in India, though, if that happens, including, you know, a 3-point city here and such not. I was kind of hoping on bashing my way through the grays with this, but, you know, now blue's ahead of gray, green's falling behind, but I'm leading the pack of the bad, of the lousy players, so that's not a good place to be. At one point I was up near the top, and it's not happening anymore. My other power hasn't really done too well, but by throwing down the money chit, I was able to increase my value to 1, 2, 3, 4, and got 8 points off of that. So that actually produced rather richly. The other one just produced it's 2 points. 2 points isn't terrible. It's hard to throw away a 2-point empire if you got nothing to replace it. So, you know, if I have another Indian state here that could make better points, I might well sink this one in the expectation that I'll be able to build it next turn. But, you know, as that is, I'm throwing away the 2 points. This turn it would have been 4 points I threw away if I declined the empire. And that's a pain in the ass. This video has, this one turn has eaten up video just because I babbled so damn much. So I'm going to load.